Most people are familiar with vitamin D in the context of bone health, how it supports calcium absorption and prevents conditions like rickets or osteoporosis. But the science has evolved significantly over the past decade, and we now understand that vitamin D operates far beyond just skeletal maintenance. In fact, it acts more like a hormone than a traditional vitamin, particularly when it comes to how it influences muscle tissue. To begin, vitamin D is unique because the body can synthesize it through sunlight exposures, specifically UVB radiation on the skin. Once produced or ingested through diet or supplementation, it undergoes two hydroxylation processes, one in the liver, converting it into 25-hydroxyvitamin-D, the form typically measured in blood tests, and another in the kidneys to become 1,25-dihydroxyvitamin-D, the biologically active form. This active form binds to what's called the vitamin D receptor VDR, which is present in many tissues throughout the body, including skeletal muscle. This is where things get interesting. The presence of VDR in muscle means that vitamin D has a direct genomic effect on muscle cells. When the active form of vitamin D binds to these receptors, it enters the nucleus of muscle cells and influences the expression of a variety of genes related to muscle growth, maintenance, and function. It plays a role in protein synthesis, calcium handling within muscle fibers, and even the proliferation and differentiation of satellite cells. These are the precursor cells that contribute to muscle repair and regeneration. Studies have shown that vitamin D deficiency is strongly associated with reduced muscle mass, increased fat infiltration in muscle, and greater risk of falls in older adults. But these effects are not limited to the elderly. Even in young, healthy individuals, low levels of vitamin D are correlated with reduced strength and poor recovery from exercise-induced muscle damage. One study found that athletes with sufficient vitamin D levels had significantly greater type Roman II fast, which muscle fiber size compared to those who were deficient. These fast, which fibers are the ones primarily responsible for explosive strength and power. They also tend to atrophy more rapidly with disuse or aging, making them particularly vulnerable and particularly important to preserve. Another compelling feature of vitamin D's hormone-like action is its influence on intracellular calcium dynamics in muscle cells. Calcium ions play a crucial role in muscle contraction. Without proper calcium release and uptake in muscle fibers, strength and endurance are impaired. Vitamin D regulates calcium homeostases within these muscle cells, ensuring optimal conditions for contraction and relaxation. This alone makes it central not just to performance, but to everyday physical function. There's also a growing body of evidence suggesting vitamin D helps combat inflammation in muscle tissue, particularly chronic, low-grade inflammation that contributes to muscle degradation over time. It modulates immune responses and can reduce the production of pro-inflammatory cytokines like IL-6 and TNF-alpha, both of which are implicated in muscle wasting conditions such as sarcopenia and cachexia. By acting on both muscle cells and immune pathways, vitamin D occupies a unique dual role as a muscle-preserving agent. Now, people often ask, how quickly can the benefits be observed after correcting a deficiency? The answer varies based on the degree of deficiency, but clinical studies have shown that in as little as 10 to 14 days, individuals who begin supplementation, particularly those who pair it with strength training, can experience measurable improvements in muscle strength and function. This isn't magic. It's the result of restored genomic signaling, improved calcium regulation, and reduced inflammation all working together. Importantly, vitamin D's impact on muscle is not isolated. It interacts with other systems, endocrine, immune, and neurological. For example, optimal vitamin D levels are linked to improved testosterone levels in men, better insulin sensitivity, and even elevated mood and cognitive function, all of which indirectly support a more active lifestyle that helps maintain muscle. But a critical point often overlooked is that vitamin D must be present in sufficient amounts in the bloodstream to exert these effects. Simply being not deficient isn't enough. The optimal range, according to most recent data, is around 40 to 60 ng/ml of 25 hydroxyvitamin D. Below 30 ng/ml, the muscle-related benefits begin to taper off significantly. This is why blood testing is crucial, because dosage without context can lead to undersupplementation or, conversely, toxicity. In summary, vitamin D is not just a passive participant in muscle health, it acts as a hormone-like regulator that affects gene expression, fiber integrity, cellular calcium, and inflammatory status in muscle tissue. Its actions are multifaceted, spanning the molecular to the systemic level. While it's tempting to reduce vitamin D to just another supplement, the science shows that it's a critical component of muscle physiology, especially in people looking to preserve or build muscle over time. Correcting a deficiency isn't just about avoiding weakness, it's about unlocking the muscle's full potential to repair, grow, and perform. When it comes to optimizing health, we often focus on how much of something we should take, how many grams of protein per day, how many milligrams of magnesium, how many IU of vitamin D. But this dosage-centered thinking can be misleading, especially when it comes to vitamin D. The truth is, what really matters is not the dosage itself, but the blood concentration that dosage achieves. This is a critical distinction that too many people overlook, and it has major implications for health, performance, and longevity. Let's get specific. When we talk about vitamin D levels in the body, we're referring to 25 hydroxyvitamin D or 25-OD. This is the form measured in blood tests and represents the circulating storage level of vitamin D. It's important to understand that the amount you consume, whether through sunlight, food, or supplements, doesn't always translate directly to this blood level. That's because individual factors like genetics, body fat percentage, gut health, liver and kidney function, and even magnesium status all influence how much vitamin D is absorbed, converted, and ultimately made bioavailable in the bloodstream. For example, two people could each take 4,000 IU of vitamin D per day, but one might reach a blood level of 50 ng/ml, while the other only reaches 25 ng/ml. Why? It could be that one has poor absorption due to gut issues like IBS or celiac disease. Or perhaps one has higher levels of body fat, which can sequester vitamin D and lower its availability in the bloodstream. Or maybe one person is low in magnesium, a critical cofactor required for vitamin D metabolism. So the key takeaway here is that dosage is a starting point, but it's not the goal, blood levels are. The consensus among most functional and integrative physicians, and increasingly among researchers in endocrine and musculoskeletal health, is that an optimal blood level of 25 OHD is somewhere between 40 to 60 nanograms per milliliter ng/ml. Some data even suggest that levels up to 80 ng/ml may provide additional benefit, particularly in autoimmune conditions or severe deficiency. However, the most robust evidence for muscle function, bone integrity, immune modulation, and mood support points to that 40-60 ng/ml range as the sweet spot. Now, why is this range so critical for muscle health? When 25 OHD levels fall below 30 ng/ml, studies have shown a marked decline in muscle protein synthesis, increased fatigue, and slower recovery from exertion. At levels below 20 ng/ml, technically the deficiency threshold, we see significantly higher risks of sarcopenia, age-related muscle loss, falls in the elderly, and even diminished athletic performance in younger adults. Conversely, once levels are raised into the optimal zone, people often experience improvements in strength, endurance, mood, and even cognitive clarity, all of which feed into a healthier, more active lifestyle that helps preserve muscle. It's also worth mentioning that vitamin D operates within a hormonal axis, meaning it interacts with parathyroid hormone, calcium, and phosphate regulation. If your vitamin D levels are too low, your body will try to compensate by increasing parathyroid hormone PTH, which promotes calcium release from bones. This not only weakens bones, but it can negatively affect the neuromuscular system. And again, the only way to know if you're in the right range is to test your blood levels, not just guess based on your supplement dose. Another layer of complexity is that vitamin D is fat, soluble, meaning it accumulates in the body. Unlike water-soluble vitamins, excess amounts are not easily excreted. This makes overdosing possible if you're supplementing blindly. Levels above 100 ng/ml can become toxic over time and lead to hypercalcemia, excess calcium in the blood, which can cause nausea, confusion, kidney damage, and even cardiac issues. So while deficiency is common, overshooting the mark isn't harmless either. This is why periodic blood testing is non-negotiable if you're serious about optimizing your vitamin D status. The test is simple, a basic serum 25-OHD blood test, which you can get through most healthcare providers or direct-to-consumer labs. Once you know your level, you can tailor your supplementation accordingly. For some, 1,000-2,000 IU per day may be sufficient. For others, especially those who are deficient or have limited sun exposure, 4,000-5,000 IU may be needed temporarily to restore balance. In extreme deficiency, short-term doses of 10,000 IU may be used under supervision, but again, the key is personalization based on lab data. Another important variable is sunlight exposure. Vitamin D production via the skin is self-regulating. Your body will stop making it when it has enough, but this only works if you're actually getting UVB exposure. People living in northern latitudes, or those who wear long sleeves, sunscreen, or work indoors, are often not producing adequate amounts naturally, even if they spend time outside. That's why supplementation becomes a practical necessity for many, particularly in the winter months. It's also essential to consider cofactors. For vitamin D to be effectively utilized, nutrients like magnesium, vitamin K2, and even zinc play supporting roles. Magnesium is involved in the enzymatic conversion of vitamin D into its active form, while K2 helps direct calcium into bones and away from arteries, preventing vascular calcification, a known risk when supplementing vitamin D in high doses without balancing nutrients. To bring it full circle, the point of vitamin D supplementation is to get your blood levels into the optimal range, not to hit an arbitrary pill count. Just like you wouldn't take random doses of thyroid hormone or insulin without measuring your levels, the same principle applies here. Data should drive decisions. In the end, your body doesn't care what the label on the bottle says. It cares about what's circulating in your blood. That's the true measure of health impact. And in the case of vitamin D, focusing on blood levels over blind dosing is one of the simplest yet most powerful steps you can take for muscle health, immune resilience, and overall performance. Vitamin D stands out among nutrients because it can be obtained not only through food or supplementation, but also synthesized by our own bodies through sunlight exposure. This unique biological feature makes it more than just a vitamin. It functions like a hormone, impacting nearly every tissue in the body, including muscle. But where things get really exciting is when we look at how vitamin D interacts with physical training, especially resistance training, to enhance muscle strength, size, and resilience. Let's start with the natural source, sunlight. When UVB rays from sunlight strike the skin, a precursor compound called 7-D-hydrocholesterol is converted into provitamin D3, which is then transformed into vitamin D3. From there, it undergoes a series of metabolic steps in the liver and kidneys before becoming the active form that can bind to receptors and exert effects in tissues. This process is elegant and efficient, provided that you're actually getting enough sun exposure and that your body has the right internal conditions to support the conversion. But modern life doesn't often cooperate. Many people live in higher latitudes where sunlight isn't strong enough during large portions of the year to stimulate adequate vitamin D synthesis. Even in sunnier regions, people are indoors most of the time or are wearing clothing and sunscreen that block UVB rays. Add in skin tone, darker skin requires more sunlight to produce the same amount of vitamin D, and the fact that older adults have reduced capacity to synthesize vitamin D, and it's easy to see why deficiency is so common. That's where supplementation becomes not just helpful, but necessary for many people. When used intelligently, vitamin D supplements can help bring blood levels into the optimal range, typically 40-60 ng/ml, and restore the many physiological processes that depend on it. But supplementation alone isn't the full story. In fact, the benefits of restoring vitamin D status are amplified when combined with resistance training, and this is where the concept of synergy comes in. Resistance training is a potent stimulus for building and preserving skeletal muscle. It works by causing microscopic damage to muscle fibers, which then repair and grow back stronger through a process called muscle protein synthesis. This process is heavily dependent on anabolic signaling pathways, the availability of amino acids, and intracellular factors that control inflammation, repair, and adaptation. Vitamin D contributes to this process on multiple levels. It binds to vitamin D receptors VDRS in muscle cells, influencing the expression of genes involved in growth, repair, and energy metabolism. It also enhances calcium regulation within muscle fibers, which is essential for proper contraction. Without efficient calcium handling, muscles tire more easily and recover more slowly. Additionally, vitamin D plays a role in modulating inflammation. Chronic low-grade inflammation can blunt the adaptive response to training and slow down recovery. Vitamin D helps to temper this, improving the muscle's ability to repair and rebuild after exercise. The data supporting this synergy is compelling. Studies have shown that individuals with low vitamin D status do not respond as well to resistance training. They gain less muscle, improve less in strength, and often experience greater fatigue during and after workouts. However, when these individuals correct their deficiency through supplementation, especially when paired with strength training, they see significantly greater improvements in performance and muscle mass compared to those who train without addressing the deficiency. One study in older adults found that vitamin D supplementation, when combined with resistance training, improved muscle strength and functional performance more than resistance training alone. This is critical because as we age, we naturally lose muscle mass, a process known as sarcopenia. But vitamin D appears to mitigate this decline, especially when the body is simultaneously exposed to the anabolic stimulus of training. Even in younger individuals and athletes, the benefits are clear. Adequate vitamin D levels have been associated with greater type Roman II muscle fiber size. These are the fast, which fibers responsible for explosive power and strength. Maintaining or enhancing the function of these fibers is essential for performance and injury prevention. Vitamin D also seems to play a role in neuromuscular function, potentially improving the firing rate of motor neurons that control muscle movement, adding another layer to the performance enhancement observed with supplementation and training. From a practical standpoint, the best approach is a combined strategy. Get sunlight exposure when possible. Aim for 10-20 minutes of direct sunlight on the arms, legs, and torso, ideally in the morning when UVB is available but not too intense. During winter months, or if you live in areas with limited sun, supplementation is almost always necessary. A typical maintenance dose ranges from 2,000 to 4,000 IU per day, though some individuals may need more to reach optimal blood levels. It's important to work with a healthcare provider to test your blood and tailor your dose accordingly. And crucially, don't neglect the training component. Supplementation without resistance training may help with muscle maintenance, but combining the two creates a multiplier effect. Your body responds more robustly to training stimuli when it has the hormonal and nutritional environment needed to support recovery and growth, and vitamin D is a cornerstone of that environment. In sum, while sunlight and supplementation are excellent strategies for optimizing vitamin D levels, the real power comes when you combine that optimization with resistance training. The interaction between these systems creates a robust internal environment where muscles can grow, repair, and perform at their highest level. And for anyone interested in preserving physical function, building strength, or simply aging well, that's a synergy worth pursuing.